Anonymous.
Greetings world. We are Anon-DK. As we continue through the Bloodlines genealogy and history, we have come to World War I. Let us take a look at history and the elite's movements during this time. During World War I, the DuPonts made a mint. Their company had $9 million surplus in its treasury, and DuPont absorbed General Motors. The DuPonts also went into the chemical business. The American government had seized the German Die Trust, and the DuPonts were given their patents. The DuPonts began to build a great chemical empire of synthetics, shatterproof glass, paints, rayon, nylon, dyes, photographic film, rubber, chemicals, drugs, etc. Alfred Victor DuPont, Alfred I's Episcopalian son, served only as a private in the Marines during World War I, but in World War II as a consultant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 1943 to 1945. The families created the Round Table groups. The Astors were the part of the financial backers behind the Round Table groups, along with Abe Bailey. Rhodes and Milner were key in the Society of the Elect, a super-secret top circle of Illuminati. In 1913 W. Averell Harriman was initiated into Skull and Bones. He helped finance Hitler to power. Hitler's war machine was IG Farbe, which was controlled by the Rothschilds through the Warburgs. Paul Warburg created the privately owned Central Bank of America, the Federal Reserve, in 1913, and was on the board of American IG. Hitler's IG Farbe, which ran the camp at Auschwitz, was a division of Standard Oil, officially owned by the Rockefellers. The Rothschilds finally saw their work pay off in United States with the creation of the Federal Reserve System, solidifying their ultimate control of the nation. The Watchtower Society started transferring all of the doctrines about 1874 to 1914. They explained that Christ's kingdom had been set up invisibly in 1914, and that although secular governments were still in place, their rule was no longer valid. Based on the Society's writings, Jehovah's Witnesses looked forward to momentous events in the year 1918. It didn't happen again. You have to give them credit, they really know how to persevere. By 1915, John Todd, who was married to Alice, is noted as one of the most important men in the East. He was appointed Massachusetts Director of Public Health and Welfare, a job where he could write checks and approve construction and medical contracts, offer political positions on high-paying state committees, most as repayment for favors, and pass funding along to hand-picked organizations and charities. His daughter was Thelma Todd, known as Hot Toddy, an extremely sexy movie actress. Thelma Todd was intimately involved with the mob, as she was the lover of Lucky Luciao, nicknamed Charlie Lucifer, who was the most feared and hated of the underworld bosses. Luciao liked Toddy as her restaurant created a legitimate front to his narcotics dealings with the Brothmars, outwardly Jewish, covertly Satanist family. During the 1920s, assassination of estimated 400 German public figures began. USA entry into League of Nations was blocked in Senate. The development of modern advertising techniques emphasize manipulation, rather than information. And in this time, Charles Taze Russell's prediction for Armageddon fails. Yet again. In 1917, United States enters World War I and Rockefellers make $200 million. Over 38 million people died in World War I. The Rockefellers alone made about $5.27 per death. For every person who died, Rockefellers got paid. That is how the elite work. Nothing is done for you, only their profit. The Rockefeller banks had the private fortune of the Romanov family separate from the Russian government's fortune. This consisted of $400 million in gold, at the then price of $20 per ounce. Declaring the Tsar and his family falsely dead enabled the Rockefeller bankers to spread out their empire using the fraudulent bankers' use of fractional reserves. Through secret accounts, the Rockefellers rolled over these funds, to their benefit, in violation of laws providing that bank accounts revert to the state government if not claimed in 7 years. After the Romanov child whose blood was pure was taken and used to further the bloodline. It is unknown if any of them were killed as of now. The evidence is sealed and has not been allowed to be looked at. Lord Balfour was an elite in the Round Table. Alfred Milner was the Round Table's official leader after the death of Cecil Rhodes, and the Round Table was funded by Lord Lionel Walter Rothschild. These were the 3 people involved in the Balfour Declaration of the death of the Tsar in 1917. The Round Table Society controls the network of the Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission and the Royal Institute of International Affairs. The Rothschilds accomplished their other goal to destroy Christian Russia by creating the Bolshevik Revolution. Rothschild-inspired and Rockefeller-muscled as usual. History books declare that Russian Tsar Nicholas II and his family following the Russian Revolution were assassinated by the Bolsheviks, July 1918, in a basement of a house in Ekaterinburg, Siberia. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, arranged by Lenin, in March 1918, ended the war with Germany, enabling the Germans to devote their efforts to the Western Front against US, France, and Great Britain. The treaty had a secret codicil, arranged by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds who financed Lenin, providing for the safe passage of the Tsar and his family in exile, like they have with their favorite Nazis. According to Thalamic legend, in 1918 Aleister Crowley came into contact with an interdimensional entity named Lam, what we now call Alien Grey. We find the Rockefellers behind the UFO and alien discourse which was brought up in the 1970s. The Amalatra working is said to allow Lam and other alien greys a passageway onto the Earth plane. Furthermore, this portal may have been further enlarged by Parsons and Hubbard in 1946 with the commencement of the Babylon working. We already know Large Hadron Colliders are the tools used to create this portal today. From 1918 to 1963 Jean Cocteau was Grand Master of the Prohibicio. Prohibition, the legal prevention of the manufacture, sale, or transportation of alcoholic beverages, except for medicinal purposes, was attempted on a national scale. This was an attempt to ratify the 18th Amendment of the Constitution and lasted until 1933. The Versailles Peace Conference meetings decided how the world would be changed as a result of the war these same people had created, just like the UN and Bilderberg today. They decided to impose impossible reparations payments on Germany, ensuring the economic collapse and thus create the very circumstances that brought the Rothschild, Hitler, to power. It was while in Paris, a meeting took place, including the Round Table members, at the Hotel Majestic, which planned and began the process of creating the Bilderberg CFRIA Trilateral Commission Network. They also decided at Versailles that they now all supported the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Ramsay MacDonald, British Prime Minister, was in favor of working with Communist Russia, a member of the Fabian Society, and was close to Anne Besant and Clark, a disciple of Illuminatus Morzini. On a side note, Sir John A. Macdonald was the first Prime Minister of Canada, Freemason, Knight of the Order of Bath, Knights Templar, and member Lafayette Royal Arch Chapter of Washington, D.C. In 1919 the Royal Institute of International Affairs was created, funded by the Astors as a club for 4 degrees Illuminati. This is the British branch of CFR, and in 1922 the Astors bought the London Times. In 1921 the Council on Foreign Relations incorporated. Hitler took over the NSGWP, National Socialist German Workers' Party. Elitist brainwashed piece of shit Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League and wrote The Pivot of Civilization, in which she called for, quote, the elimination of human weeds, for the cessation of charity because it prolonged the lives of the unfit, for the segregation of morons, misfits, and the maladjusted, and for the sterilizatio of genetically inferior races. End quote. That is what the elite really think of you. The mindset they force on you through their controlled education systems, controlled medias, controlled music and controlled movies. The devastating thing is that the majority of people in this world believe these disgusting lies. That humanity is an infection. They view you as an infection that they must destroy. They blame all the war, death, poverty, starvation and pollution on you, and like the sheep you are, you believe it. You believe you are the ones causing the problems of this world, and so you will accept the elite's solution which will eliminate you. While brainwashed fanatics might not know why they are against abortion clinics, just as those in support of them don't educate themselves to realize that it was all created to control the population, perhaps we can all stop with the foolish, orchestrated, civil unrest movements long enough to stop the next wave of elimination from taking root. Unlikely, as everyone looks around waiting for someone else to do the work. 1922 King Tutankhamun's tomb opened in Egypt, invoking King Tut's curse. 14 violent deaths were linked to the curse. Mussolini, a British intelligence agent, comes to power in Italy and attempts to eliminate mafia in Sicily. Zionism, another Rothschild creation, was promoted. W. Aver el-Harima, Fritz Thyssen and Friedrich Flick created several entities to help finance Hitler and to produce the weapons he would need to fight World War II. You may recognize them from the Nuremberg trials. The German Steel Trust, Vereinigte Stahlwerke, produced 35% of Nazi Germany's explosives, 50.8% of Germany's pig iron, 38.5% of Nazi Germany's galvanized steel, 36% of Germany's heavy plate, 22.1% of Germany's wire, and many other things essential for Hitler, who was of course in the Rothschild bloodline. His right-hand man and assistant to Tesla, George H. Scurf Sr. and Son Jr., were smuggled out during Operation Paperclip. Hitler's cousin, George Scurf Jr.'s last name was changed to Bush. The publicly stated Bush lineage as given by the government consists of random people who had the name Bush added after they made him president. German-born Scurf, father of Daddy Bush, was thrust onto the Samuel Bush family tree with the name Prescott Sheldon Bush and claimed to be the youngest son of Samuel Prescott Bush and Flora Sheldon. That would be the origin of the Bush and Prescott names. Scurf and his friend Meg Aller, also smuggled to safety through Operation Paperclip, were part of CIA mind control experiments such as MKUltra. The SS and Nazis who were relocated during this operation were taken to the bases in Antarctica and Argentina. From their new identities were created, assignments given, and integration into their designated governments proceeded. George H. Scurf Jr., called George Herbert Walker Bush, became the 41st President of the United States. Scurf Jr. was Nikola Tesla's trusted assistant. His son, nicknamed Curious George, Tesla did not like or trust. George Sr.'s name was changed to Prescott Bush, and it is easy to find the rest. A side note about Hitler. Hitler's photo was taken at the Lake McDonald Lodge in Glacier National Park, Montana, on August 27, 1997. A whistleblower and ex-SS officer, Otto Scorzi, was there. This is not so impactful as it would seem when one knows Hitler was transferred to the USA to reside in Florida, where he was known as is still known worldwide as Disney. However, let us get back to the timeline. Dr. Green, also known as Joseph Mengele, used to pull daisy petals while saying the words I love you not. If the last petal was I love you not, the child would be put to death. Surviving children were left traumatized. The I love you not pulls the child two ways with this message. It is an absolute, taking all control over the other. We see American children playing this so-called game today. A common practice among the top 13 families is to have an important, to the public, child secretly or quietly without fanfare, and adopt the child out to another family, which we saw blatantly in the case of President Obama. The child then takes on another last name, which hides the genealogy. In occult ceremonies, the biological parents willingly participate in these ceremonies, selling their children to the elite. For instance, in a ceremony for Mother of Darkness, the biological father must impregnate his young daughter, who is being initiated into the Mothers of Darkness. The first baby by the girl must come from her biological father and must be sacrificed by her to Satan. Many of the Illuminati children are adopted out. Last names are not the criteria, but the blood is. It is more than just having the correct blood. The magic power, the mutation, in the blood is critical. Once a branch loses its occult power by dilution, its blood is nothing. In 1922, Alice Bailey and her husband Foster Bailey, founders of Lucifer's Trust, now called Lucis Trust and World Goodwill, which is an occult organization in the UN, write Agenda 21. They are known Luciferians, with Mr. Bailey being a 32 degrees Mason. Alice Bailey was one of the people used to create the United Nations and bring in the New World Order. The United Nations is quite open in agreeing with founder of Lucifer's Trust, Alice Bailey, that everyone who wants to enter the New World Order will swear to Lucifer. This all will be accomplished thanks to the New Age movement we are seeing today. Merging all religions into one, as well as bringing in the ancient belief system that we are one and therefore we are the creator. We are as gods. This ancient deception has been the downfall of small-minded and ignorant mankind for thousands of years. This deception we have warned you about and will continue to in the future. Do not be deceived. On the propaganda and mind control front, we see Jack Warner in 1923, founder of Warner Brothers, which was the leading motion picture studio that introduced the first feature-length talking picture. The Warners are confirmed Masons. Time magazine and US Weekly News magazine are founded by Henry R. Luce and Britt O'Had, two young Yale graduates and reporters on the Baltimore Sun. The Times board chairman, Andrew Heskell, was associated with David Rockefeller and, being from Yale, obviously, Skull and Bones members. During this time, the International Police, Interpol, was founded in Vienna. The assassination of Pancho Villa took place in Mexico, and the founding of Hitler's National Socialist, Nazi, Party in Germany. In 1924, J. Edgar Hoover takes over FBI. Lovecraft ghostwrites for Houdini, a confirmed Mason. Benjamin Creme was born. As a child, he was deeply into the occult and witchcraft and was proclaimed as the John the Baptist of the Antichrist. Russell recommended his followers read the book, Angels and Women. He personally supervised its editing and said it was beneficial because it throws light on certain biblical subjects. It was dictated by a fallen angel to a female spirit medium. Second Watchtower President Joseph Rutherford concurred with Russell's advice and advertised it in his magazine, Golden Age, recommending it and offering a discount to Golden Age readers. 1925 Joseph Rutherford of the Jehovah's Witnesses predicted an Armageddon and fails again, much to your relief, I'm sure. Curtis organizes the Institutes of Pacific Relations in at least 10 countries for the Round Table Group. We see the rise of the CFR due to Rockefeller and other foundations' fundings. The crystal skull is discovered in ruins of Lubatu in British Honduras. Paul Valorous Collins, another writer, studied art in Paris, and interviewed Italian strongman Vito Mussolini for Outlook magazine. He was a Presbyterian and a Freemason. In 1929 the Great Depression begins. Prescott Bush claims to have lost all his money in the 1929 stock market crash. The Harimers came again to financially help them. The Fabian Socialists created the Political and Economic Planning Group, PEP, of which Mason Viscount Waldorf Astoria was the leader. He also led a confidential program that the PEP created, which was implemented through the British government. This is described in the book Principles of Economic Planning. George Bernard Shaw is very close to Lady Nancy Astor, who became the first female member of Parliament. Nancy Astor wrote The Natural History of the Vampire and other books. Waldorf and Nancy Astor visit Russia as good friends of Stalin and are consequently treated as royalty. Christian Science, also supported by the Astors, is a front for witchcraft, again mixing the lines between occult and truth. David Astor, so called the Honorable, attended Bilderberger meetings in 1957 and 1966. In the 1930s the Mafia becomes integral part of the U.S. organized crime. Sums of money are spent in education by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations. Money goes to promote John Dewey, Marxism, a one-world government agenda, and socialism. Continuing political assassinations accompany Nazi rise to power. Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood published the Birth Control Review. In that magazine she openly supported the infanticide program promoted by Nazi Germany and publicly championed Adolf Hitler's goal of Aryan supremacy. Ernst Rudi, a member of the Nazi Party, and director of German medical experimentation programs, served as an advisor to Sanger's organization. The Watchtower Society claimed to be creationists at this time, openly opposed to eugenics, while many atheistic evolutionists were generally supportive. Watchtower supported the Sanger depopulation movement. U.S. Public Health Service recruited 400 syphilis-infected black men, after a government-planned syphilis outbreak, what we call a false flag, PSYOP, biodrill. The government's planned human experimentations, which they now carry out and blast in the news openly every day. The Tuskegee participants were all told that they would be treated for their infections, but instead of treating their illness, all medicines were withheld. The black men were then actively prevented from obtaining treatment elsewhere, and experiments were done on many patients. This study lasted until 1972. So they say. Given what we know of all other operations, when they say it has ended, it only means they have changed the name. Edward S. Van Dewey founded the Planned Parenthood Center of Syracuse, New York. Planned Parenthood Federation of America was created by the elite for depopulation. As they state, to provide leadership, making effective means of voluntary fertility regulation, including contraception, abortion, sterilizatio, and infertility services, available and fully accessible to all as a central element of reproductive health, stimulating and sponsoring relevant biomedical, socio-economic, and demographic research, developing appropriate information, education, and training programs to increase knowledge about human reproduction and sexuality. Planned Parenthood maintains a 5,000-volume library on abortion, sterilizatio, and population control. It is one of the elite's reaping stations, providing them with fresh supplies needed for their Luciferia human sacrifice rituals. Another of their organizations used for reaping is Child Protective Services. Different rituals require different ages. One of Planned Parenthood's leaders, Ella F. Guttmacher, signed the Humanist Manifesto, and President Faye Wattleto was awarded Humanist of the Year in 1986. But back to our timeline. In this time, 1930s, the Reichstag fire, set by Nazis, was used to bring martial law, and there was a so-called attempted assassination of Franklin Roosevelt, but Chicago's Mayor C.E. Aramack was killed instead. Daryl F. Zork co-founded 20th Century Productions in Hollywood and is a confirmed Mason. Other assassinations that took place during this time include that of S.M. Kirov, Soviet leader and Stalin collaborator. Assassination of Senator Huey Long. First legal lobotomy performed by Egas Moniz in Lisbon. Beginning of Moscow Purge trials, in which numerous communist leaders were tortured into false confessions and then executed, much like Al-Qaeda prisoners. Hitler's Black Order began. In 1937 the Spanish Civil War begins. The first of 48 lost colony stones are found in North Carolina. Stones tell the story of the supposedly lost Roanoke Island colony and are found all over the state. Amelia Earhart Putnam, aviator, disappears over the South Pacific. The assassination of Leon Sedov, Trotsky's son, and the first assassination attempt against Trotsky took place. Nazis invade Austria. Interpol is taken over by Nazis. German expedition to Antarctica stakes out 600,000 square kilometers of land. Antarctica is owned by the families, bought through this and other covers. During this time electroshock treatment is discovered and, like every new discovery, instantly practiced on children and mentally ill. No research done on safety or effects. Orson Welles' dramatization of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds scares American radio listeners in a social experiment, or what we would call a terror drill, false flag. The show was so realistic to the public they reacted accordingly. Born in 1936, Jorge Bergoglio was going to propose to his girlfriend when he stopped in the church for confession and had an epiphany. He decided that day to become a priest. Probably the same epiphany every pope-to-be gets when he receives a tap on the shoulder from the elite. He is an accomplice in the kidnapping of 2 Jesuit priests in Argentina during the Dirty War. A lawyer filed a suit against him regarding this issue. The priests, Orlando Yorio and Franz Jalix, were kidnapped and tortured, but found alive 5 months later, drugged and semi-naked. Yorio accused Bergoglio of effectively handing them over to the death squads by declining to tell the regime that he endorsed their work. Yorio, who died in 2000, said in a 1999 interview that he believed that Bergoglio did nothing to free us, in fact just the opposite. Jalix moved to a monastery in Germany and refused to discuss it after being threatened into silence. Today we see the child-raping murderer as Pope Francis, our current Antichrist. In the 1950s and through the wartime, Bergoglio is known to have been living in the same town and acquainted with Dr. Megalla, also known as Jose Megalla, Fritz Holmer, and Peter Hochbeikler, who was also working with the CIA. CIA agents frequented them, as well as Mossad agents Issa Harel, Shimo Benaharo and 3 others who had been in Argentina since April 1960. Adolf Eichmann, also known as Ricardo Clemente, was in Buenos Aires, being kept safe by CIA and Megalla during this time, and Stanley Underham, who was the poster mom for Barack Obama, is known to have dropped in for a visit to be sterilized. In 1956 until 1958, CIA agent Stanley Underham, daughter of CIA agent Stanley Durham, moved to Buenos Aires to have tests done on her by Megala, to be prepped for service. She was then put in place at the Hawaii University to pick up her next assignment, her adoptive son, supposedly born Barry Mohammed Sobakar on March 7, 1960. Argentina is definitely a hot spot and filled with interesting events and experiments. On a side note, Rothschild in his research work 1966 argued that dual citizenship was an influential factor in the decision of the majority of non-Africans not to seek Kenyan citizenship after independence, despite non-discrimination assurances by local Asians and Europeans leaders. He discussed the variance between official and non-official views of citizenship, which largely regarded non-Africans who had adopted Kenyan citizenship as being motivated by convenience, rather than identification with the core group. In the 1940s, Winston Churchill, England's Secretary of War, held a seat on Parliament, was Prime Minister, also a Mason and a Druid. He was good friends to Franklin Roosevelt, Joseph Kennedy, Aristotle Onassis, and another fellow Mason, Billy Graham. Next we see the successful assassination of Leon Trotsky in Mexico. British secret police are renamed to MI-5 and MI-6 for duration of war. Interpol moved to near Berlin, with Reinhard Heydrich in charge. Nazis allegedly begin building Hitler's secret bunker in Antarctica. Roosevelt sends General Wild Bill Donovan on info-gathering mission to Europe, and Donovan recommends a Central Intelligence Organization. The U.S. State Department creates Division of Special Research headed by CFR member Pazbulski. The Nazis believed that right-hand D negativo was proof of their ET origin from their ancient gods. They did many tests and experiments on people to figure out more about genetics and especially the Aryan blood. We will not go into the blood as we have already done a series on it. Next, the public is told Japan attacks a US fleet at Pearl Harbor. Again, just as in 9/11, America had attacked itself and blamed someone else. However, it enabled the American government to call martial law and round up Asian families, putting them in their concentration camps now named FEMA camps. Still, the blind citizens do not believe it would happen to them today. Donovan is made head of new Office of Coordinator of Information. Harvey Hollister Bundy Sr. was one of the leaders in the Manhattan Project, as mentioned before, developing the atom bomb and doing liaison work between the War Department and Office of Scientific Research and Development. The assassination of Interpol chief and Nazi, Heydrich in Czechoslovakia takes place, and Donovan's Lockheed evolves into the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, while Nathan Xra assumes control of the Jehovah's Witnesses. In 1942, the Stewart family intermarried with the Rockefellers. They own numerous theaters in California which have secret tunnels to daycare centers where children are ritually abused and programmed. It is astonishing how many people are blind, giving their children to others to raise because they don't have the mental capacity to take care of their offspring and protect them. James C. Stewart, a member of the Illuminati, built the Mormons' Capitol building in Salt Lake City, 60 Wall Tower in New York, and the Savoy Hotel in London that are used for the Pilgrim Society headquarters. James belonged to the Pilgrim Society as well. Stuart MacDonald was president of Army War Shows from 1942 to 1943. William Harima serves as U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union. LSD-25 is made by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmar. Juan Perón and other pro-Nazi leaders take power in Argentina. Pilots on both sides of the war report seeing Foo Fighters while flying war missions. These unexplained flying objects are seen by many today as well as through history, described as red or orange orbs. The government has never given an explanation for the orbs, though it is easy to explain for those with eyes to see. One explanation of this might be found at the Advanced Robotics Systems Engineering Laboratory, where they have several versions of unmanned aerial vehicles. Although the orbs have been seen for many centuries and all over the world, this facility has come up with a very close replicatio. Continuing on, more attempted assassinations of Hitler. Nazis begin sending millions of dollars worth of jewels, paintings and cash to Argentina for safekeeping. Russian NKVD is reorganized as MGB. Donovan prepares a plan for Roosevelt to establish a Central Intelligence Agency, which was later reconsidered by Truman. American band leader Glenn Miller disappears on a flight over the English Channel. The assassination of James Forrestal took place at Bethesda Hospital Neurological Ward, after his attempt to warn Roosevelt of Illuminati plot. Mussolini was killed. In January 1945, Illuminati's Grand Master Joseph Mengele and a few others leave Germany. Hitler allegedly escapes from Berlin after arranging a fake suicide cover story. Hitler's death is announced. Admiral Dönitz takes command. Submarines U-530, U-977 and others begin a secret journey from Norway soon after Quisling allegedly refused Hitler's offer to take him aboard a submarine to a safe refuge. 2 months after Germany surrenders, submarines U-530 and U-977 give themselves up in Mar del Plata, Argentina, after allegedly being lost from the submarine convoy taking Hitler and others to their hideout in Antarctica. Nazi leader Martin Bormann escapes without a trace from Berlin after supervising Hitler's suicide. End of World War II. The Adolf Hitler propaganda says he has succeeded in killing 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. What you probably have never been told, however, is that in addition to the Jews murdered by the Nazis, twice that amount of non-Jews were also ruthlessly liquidated by them. The number of Jews murdered is much closer to 2 million. Studies vary, as one would expect from an elite agenda of deception and genocide. During this time, the propaganda machines worked overtime to create a weapon so terrifying the USA could prove itself as the most bloodthirsty, ruthless and war-hungry country in the world. A country none could fight against. The bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki as the nuclear bomb hoax was perfected. The fear porn was blasted in the media as always, and people have been ruled by it since. General Jail, head of Nazi intelligence, was captured by US Army and flown to Washington. Other Nazi and British agents were imported to the US, along with Werner von Braun and other developers of the V-2 rockets. OSS disbanded, its agents moving to military intelligence agencies and the State Department. CFR takes over the USA State Department. The United Nations is founded. An Air Force plane's engines fail over Iwo Jima as Foo Fighters maneuver around it. The official beginning of Bermuda Triangle mystery occurred when Flight 19, made up of 5 naval bombers, disappeared off the coast of Florida. Another plane was sent to investigate and also disappears. 6 planes and 27 men in total vanished. The triangle happens to be on the spot where an island, centuries ago, the descendants of Cain found and lived on, until it was sent to the bottom of the sea. The elite own the triangle. No one is allowed to go through the area as they would most likely come across something unexpected. The truth they must keep secret from you. Yes, you are correct. The island is called Atlantis. In 1946, during World War II, we see Hot Toddy's Liu Xiao working for US intelligence SOE and OSS. He was deported to Sicily and continued to work for US intelligence and Pomidex, the elite's assassination bureau, now in the Bahamas. This company was used to fund assassinations such as JFK. In this time we see the murder of Wire Service King, James Rage by Syndicate Friends of Jack Ruby. The indictment was dropped following additional murders. John Kennedy and Richard Nixon are selected to House of Representatives. 33rd President Truman's executive order sets up the National Intelligence Authority and Central Intelligence Group, now called the NSA and CIA. In Brussels, home of Bilderberg, Admiral Beard allegedly leads naval research expedition to Antarctica to attack Hitler's secret hideout. The attempt fails and Hitler and his UFO scientists continue their activities. Waves of unexplained ghost rockets are seen in Europe, especially Scandinavian. Bill Clinton, the illegitimate son of Winthrop Rockefeller Collins' bloodline, is hatched, much to everyone's future disappointment, in Arkansas on August 19, 1946. William Jefferson Bill Clinton, born William Jefferson Blythe III, became governor of Arkansas from 1979 to 1981 and 1983 to 1992, the Attorney General from 1977 to 1979, and President of the United States 1993 to 2001. As a member of the CIA, he was a Master Counselor of the Masonic Connected Demolay and, of course, graduated Oxford. Clinton ordered the children and adults in the compound at Mount Carmel to be attacked. It was situated about 10 miles from the city of Waco. There were no survivors. He has always been a pedophile and sexual predator and a habitual liar. Just like his wife. Here we see the attempted assassination of Minneapolis Mayor Hubert Humphrey. Partition of India receives strong impetus from the Round Table Group. National Security Act connects Department of Defense, National Security Council and Central Intelligence Agency. France creates SDECE, similar to CIA. Kenneth Arnold reports flying saucers near Yakima, Washington, and other reports soon follow. The assassination of pedophile Mahatma Gandhi and the attempted assassination of Labour leader Walter Reuther occur. Operation Ohio, a CIA program, begins and is responsible for 100 Europeans' assassinations during the next 10 years. The World Council of Churches is founded in Amsterdam, preparing the way for the one world religion. One of the most remarkable cases of mind control involves a famous model of the late 40s and 50s named Candy Jones. In the book, The Control of Candy Jones, the author reviewed hours of tapes made by Candy Jones and her husband, which revealed a systematic program to create and manipulate alter personalities as the foundation for programmed couriers resistant to torture, where the primary personality would not even be aware of the secret information being carried. The information could be summoned forth via a post-hypnotic command or response to a programmed cue. This mind control technique is used today and many hundreds of thousands of children are subjected to it daily. Now we come back full circle to Mac George Bundy, who was invited to Harvard University to teach as assistant professor and, in 4 years, made dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard, all after being an instant military genius, an economic wizard, and went on to be head of the arts and sciences. Astonishing. Bundy was appointed president of the Ford Foundation, brought in Harold Howe II to be vice president, a position that Howe was unqualified for, except that Howe was a skull and bones brother and was a team player that would promote the New World Order agenda. That is more than is needed to be in a position of power in America and much of the world. Both of the Fords on the foundation board resigned. The U.S. Army begins 20 years of simulated germ warfare attacks against American cities, conducting at least 239 open-air tests. The population control agenda continues. Now the biowarfare programs are running worldwide under the name of chemtrails. 1950s U.S. Congress passes M.C. Carr's Internal Security Act, setting up program for detention of subversives. Citizens were held without trial based on suspictio. Watch groups were set up to keep track of citizens affiliated in certain groups, just as it continues today. However, the movements of the citizens and their affiliations have become completely open and trackable thanks to platforms such as Facebook and Twitter, which were created for this reason: to log everything you think, feel and do, filing you in a category which now includes not only your banking details, search details, emails, contacts, calls, but also your DNA. U.S. Army engages in what they called a simulated germ warfare in San Francisco and the Pentagon. National Council of Churches is founded in UAS. Mount Weather, a 200,000 square foot building underground in the Blue Ridge Mountains, is built. It is a command station for a network of 96 nuclear-resistant fallout shelters around Washington, D.C. The Earth is riddled with deep underground bases, cities and tunnels, some of which run under the oceans, connecting countries. For example, the 8 underground cities of Cappadocia, or the 30 different 8-level complexes discovered under Dirakuya, Turkey, and more around the world, and covering U.S. Under Presidents Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower, the U.S. government spent billions of dollars carving out caves and assembling the underground fortresses in preparation for nuclear war. We have seen them being stocked and prepared today. Many of you will have heard of Jade Helm 15, which, thanks to the anonymous who got the truth out and activists who kept it going enough, was delayed due to too much attention. The conditioning for such an event was still effective. The next time the push hit, the people will not fight back. This is the purpose. It is ongoing today. The mission has not completed its goal, and so as all of the elite's operations, it will run until it is complete and martial law is called in the USA. Just because they say it's over doesn't mean it's true. Coincidentally, Obama had called martial law in 2014 and Trump has called it again in his recent executive order in December 2017. The American dream is only achieved by those who sleep. In 1951, William P. Bundy quit Covington and Burling to begin openly working for the CIA as an analyst, then as assistant to deputy director of the CIA. His job as assistant required atomic energy level clearance. While still with the CIA, he was placed as the staff director of the new Presidential Commission on National Goals. Bundy's Commission on National Goals set down goals that are from the Hegelian philosophy. The individual has a duty to advance the will of the state, and that the state is to stimulate changes of attitude. He stated, quote, "The American citizen in the years ahead ought to devote a larger portion of his time and energy directly to solution of the nation's problems. Many ways are open for citizens to participate in the attainment of national goals." End quote. All for the greater good. Oil executive John Warlick McDonald Jr., Illuminati member, lives in Arlington, Virginia and was with the U.S. Supreme Court in 1951. McDonald was in the U.S. military government and ran occupied Germany after World War II with NATO, CENTO, CA, National War College, the United Nations, and the State Department. With all of that, he still found time to attend numerous UN conferences for the USA. He was the USA's coordinator for the United Nations Drinking Water Works. He is a member of the Cosmos Club and the Club of Rome. Harvey Hollister Bundy Sr. took over the Carnegie Endowment for Peace from John Foster Dulles. The Carnegie Endowment for Peace has been a major vehicle for the Illuminati to finance tax-free various projects. Harvey got the job at Carnegie because Alger Hiss had been convicted of perjury. The men who run the various Carnegie foundations work with the Rockefellers. Before becoming Grand Master of Pro-ADCO in 1981, Platet de Saint Clair transferred 100 million francs worth of gold ingots to Switzerland to the Union de Banques Suisse. When this was publicly revealed, he said that it was a legitimate move made for the French government. Also in 1951, Freemason Billy Graham and another elite puppet evangelist had dinner with two prostitutes and took them home. Billy Graham had a wife and children at home. He told his friend that the prostitute had only taken off her clothes and he'd gotten scared and come back to their hotel room. The man who ran security for the Sacramento Crusade saw a high-priced hooker sneak into Billy Graham's room prior to him going out for the crusade. Billy Graham and this high-priced hooker were alone together in the room, a honeypot used to open Billy Graham up to blackmail, should Graham ever try to stray from the proper course set for him by the Illuminati. They have plenty of ammunition to blackmail him. You can see the same corruption in any branch of religion and politics you chose to look into. Meanwhile, the Hispundi affair led to McCarthy being killed and discredited, a socialist of the CFR who was given wide publicity as an anti-communist hero from what happened to Hiss. This socialist was Richard Nixon. He was given false credit for convicting Hiss of CFR in order to build a false public image as an anti-communist crusader. We have seen this happen before. Nixon did not do the footwork to get Hiss convicted, contrary to the false image the establishment newspapers and history books give. Lou Russell helped Nixon get Hiss convicted. Alger Hiss was framed. During this time, Reverend Sun Young Moon founded the Unification Church. Moon claims he is the new Messiah and Korea is God's chosen nation. Moon sees Christian churches as furthering Satan's power, stating, quote, "When Jesus grew up, he failed as a leader because he was unable to love his disciples enough to motivate them to kill for him or die in his place." End quote. One special high-level meeting is held twice yearly called the Mother of Darkness. The Rothschilds and all the other families attend. The leader, dubbed the Grandmother, was a Collins in 1955. The Collins family has been kept out of the limelight because they have more occult power than the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. The meeting in 1955 was all males, while the council in 1978 had several women on it. An eyewitness description of the meeting is as follows: the Grandmother, a Collins woman, was thought to be in her middle 50s at the time of this meeting. She had a deep dictatorial voice, was small in stature, and was very powerful. She was decked out on her throne with a great deal of jewelry. One of the first things done was to lay before her feet small gold bricks. Two boys, who were taken to be her sons, one of whom was Tom Collins, who was later gunned down by the Illuminati, were near her throne. As only the most honored and powerful dared be in the vicinity of her throne, this showed that these two Collins boys were powerful. The boys passed out papers, which had timetables written on them of things that were to happen. A great discussion was carried on about what had happened in the world to bring in Satan's one world government during the last 6 months and what was prepared to happen in the near future. Things that had not gone according to plan were discussed. The Ark of the Covenant was discussed, where it was hidden in Africa, and a ritual mocking the Ark of the Covenant was held. 7 children in white were brought in from generational satanic families and presented before Grandmother Collins. They laid prostrate in worship of her. She moved her scepter with a snake up and down, striking the floor to show approval of a child candidate. Then 7 other children were sacrificed for the 7 approved children, one for each child, whose name would then be written with a quill using the sacrificed child's blood. The children were given oaths. The Grandmother rotated her throne and faced the Council of 13 and declared, speaking in English, "This is tomorrow's generation, a chosen few." Something Hitler stated many times. If you can make a small group of people feel more important or greater than the rest of humanity, there is no end to the corruption that will take place. We must take note of the symbols again. The Aga, serpent spirit, is depicted in the form of a snake, also represents dragons, dinosaurs, sea creatures, and any other reptile. It is the symbol of wisdom, eternity, healing, mystery, magical power, and holiness. What did you think our genie, Voldemort's snake, represents in Harry Potter? They always leave their symbols in everything they do. They must label everything. They must tell you of their plans, which is why they made the movie industry such a big deal. It is the easiest way to get their messages out, and people do not see. Instead, people become conditioned to the repeated agendas until they themselves agree with it. Deception is impossible to conquer if one has ego. Pride is the deathfall. Again, it's interesting and important to see the box, Ark, coming into play. As we have discussed before, we have the DNA shaped as boxes, the Ark of the Covenant, the black cube we see today all around the world, the Rubik's Cube, the Kabbalah, the Allspark, the mezuzah. Pandora translates directly as Satan's box. Pan is Satan. You can also find the Greek story about Pandora, almost exactly like the story of Adam and Eve, forbidden fruit, forbidden box, both containing an unknown power, based on deception. However, as we have already discovered, Cain's daughter was one of the first blood-infected women, creating yet another meaning to that term. If you have followed this far, the box, that is your mind, cannot be closed again. The seed of truth has been planted in you, and you will be unable to stop its growth. Pass these messages on so others can wake. Time is limited and will soon be out. Help us end this corruption and control. You must be the change you wish to see. It is possible. Just spread the truth and be free. In 1955, several men associated with the Priory de Sion obtained some old parchments, two of which gave the Merovingian genealogies, and they used the British notary of royal appointment Patrick Francis Jordan Freeman in relation to a request to the French government to take the old documents to London, England, where they were kept at 39 Great Russell Street. Later, P.F.J. Freeman was used again the next year to request that the documents be allowed to stay in England to be held in a safe deposit box at Lloyd's Bank of Europe in London. They lock their data up, but they collect and sell yours with every click you make on the internet. One of the men involved went by the name Captain Ronald Stansmore Nutting of London, born in Dublin, Ireland. He is reported to be British intelligence MI5, and had sat on the board of directors of at least 14 companies, including Arthur Guinness and Guardian Assurance. He was chairman of the board of the British and Irish Steam Packet Company. He was also governor of the Bank of Ireland. One of Guardian Assurance's departmental chairmen was also an MI5 operative besides Captain Nutting. Another PDS member who was with Nutting was Viscount Frederick Leathers, who was British Minister of War Transport during World War II. Viscount Leathers had a business associate and longtime friend Sir William Stevenson, who was the wartime chief for MI6's American branch office called BSC, British Security Coordination, in New York. Another friend of Leathers was Coupe Guthrie, also headed BSC for MI6 in New York. Guthrie was a shipping executive. Due to internal trouble in the Priory de Sion, started a rule that members had to place a birth certificate and signature with the Priory. An English faction created forgeries of birth certificates and signatures, and in secret protest sent these as originals to France. P.J. Freeman then got involved in this act of defiance, and another division occurred between the French members and the British-American members. The French wanted more of a role and some type of restoration of the monarchy in a united Europe. The Vatican and the Pro-Radicaux work together. John Drick, a Robert Aboud, and Gaylord Freeman were three members of the Pro-Radicaux that were associated with the First National Bank of Chicago. John Drick had started as an assistant cashier in 1944 and became a vice president 3 years later. Moore, an activist called the first political martyr, was a trade unionist, journalist and revolutionary activist in Kenya when he was mysteriously assassinated in February 1965. Thomas Joseph Odhiambo, Mamboya, Kenyan, was a trade unionist, educator, Pan-Africanist, author, freedom fighter, cabinet minister and one of the founding fathers of the Republic of Kenya. Visits JFK and others in Washington, D.C. Tom was 38 years old when he was gunned down on July 5, 1969, by Arshawn Isaac Jagajarog, a patsy whose last words were, "Why don't you go after the big man?" Like most things during this time, papers are sealed. Jomo Kenyatta suddenly went into a coma for 3 days after a stroke in Mombasa, April 1968, and died. Many interesting events took place at this time surrounding Kenya and Africa as a whole. Asian business tycoon, owner and chairman of Triton Petroleum Company, Triton Energy Limited, Yagesh Devani was a close friend with Kenyan prominent politicians, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta and former Vice President Moody Awori. In 2007 the company purchased National Oil Supplies with the help of Odinga, when it all went bad they ran and is estimated now in India or UK. Vice President of the Sinclair Oil and Gas Company, in Tulsa in 1959, was Marshall McDonald, who was an active Freemason and married into the Collins family. Note the cities / towns Tulsa, Wagner, Muskogee, and Broken Arrow in Oklahoma are controlled by elite and also used as code words for different false flag attacks in the USA. One Van Dewey was the liaison officer between MI6, the CIA, Mossad, and the Vietnamese government during the 1960s. A group of environmentalists and population control adherents set out to block the use of DDT for mosquito and malaria control, after it had been found that the insecticide was extremely effective in saving human lives. Alexander King, president of the Club of Rome, wrote, quote, "My own doubts came when DDT was introduced. In Guyana, within 2 years, it had almost eliminated malaria. So my chief quarrel with DDT, in hindsight, is that it has greatly added to the population problem." End quote. Another obvious elitist with depopulation agendas. In the 1990s, Lawrence S. Rockefeller created the Rockefeller UFO Initiative. The Rockefellers have had their hands in the alien agenda and UFOs for quite some time. The upcoming deception. David George MacDonald practiced secret medical and psychological research, including secret research for the Neuropsychiatrical Research Unit in San Diego for the U.S. Navy in 1962 and 1963. Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan and was a good friend of John F. Kennedy. Some of his other followers were Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Zaza Gabor, who were also girlfriends of Anton LaVey. Now we have caught up on some highlights in the 1900s and hope you can see how the elite work through events and how reality is quite different than you are told. You can see many resigning from their posts today as the spotlight gets too hot. If one looks further, one finds these people have only resigned in public view, however they stay in the positions of power. Hidden up the magician's sleeve. We will continue to see top people in their professions resign from their posts as the replacement is necessary to keep up the illusion. Remember, every time they change a name or a place you all forget who they are and stop paying attention. These are just chess moves and we must stay vigilant. And as always, Expect more.